Hello and welcome. My name is Brjay Williams, and I'm here to bring you the Bay State Banner Weekend Review. We start up this week with Massachusetts lawmakers turning up the heat on fossil fuel companies. A new bill is being proposed that would require major oil and gas corporations to pay into a climate resilience fund, and the amount would be based on how much greenhouse gas pollution they're historically responsible for. If it passes, Massachusetts would become the third state in the country to hold fossil fuel companies financially accountable for their role in climate change, following similar laws already passed in New York and Vermont. Under the proposal, the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs would first estimate how much damage climate change has already caused the Commonwealth. From there, they'd use a method called attribution science to determine how much each company contributed to the crisis. That money wouldn't just sit in a bank account, it would go directly into a state-managed climate fund to support resilience efforts, especially in communities hit hardest by extreme heat, flooding, and other climate impacts. Supporters of the bill say this is about fairness and accountability. Why should local taxpayers foot the bill when corporations responsible for the problem have made record profits for decades? But not everyone's on board. Fossil fuel lobbyists and some conservative states are already challenging similar laws in court, arguing that states shouldn't have the power to impose fees on past emissions, or that those fees might raise gas prices. Supporters counter that this isn't about regulating new emissions, it's about cleaning up the mess that's already been made. And as one group of economists put it in defense of Vermont's version of the law, supply and demand, not one-time accountability payments, are what truly determine gas prices. With storms worsening and federal support shrinking, many say this legislation is more than a policy play. It's a lifeline for the future of Massachusetts. Next up, we face the question, what does it mean to live in an environmental justice community? That's a question one of our readers submitted to the Banner's Encyclopedia Climactica series, and it's an important one, especially for neighborhoods across Massachusetts facing the impacts of pollution, climate change, and infrastructure development. In short, if your community meets certain criteria, you may have additional protections. The state designates a neighborhood as an environmental justice community if 40% or more of residents are people of color, 25% or more speak English less than very well, or the average household income is less than 65% of the statewide median. This designation comes from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and it's designed to prioritize communities that have historically been overlooked or overburdened when decisions are made about new highways, industrial sites, or other projects that can impact health and quality of life. But experts and advocates say it's not always enough. Professor Daniel Faber of Northeastern's Global Center for Climate Justice points out that the criteria are helpful, but they don't capture the full picture. Factors like pre-existing pollution or higher rates of asthma and other health issues aren't always included. And Dwayne Tyndall from the Roxbury-based nonprofit Alternatives for Community and Environment says that while the designation is a step forward, it doesn't guarantee real enforcement or community power. As he puts it, it's part of the cocktail. But we still need education, organizing, and accountability to make the label matter. So why does this matter to you? Because if your neighborhood is labeled an environmental justice community, you may have more say in public projects through laws like the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. But that only works if the system is transparent and if people speak up. In our next story, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu and challenger Josh Kraft are headed to the general election this November. The two emerged as the top candidates from the week's September 9th preliminary, where Mayor Wu won in a landslide, bringing in over 70% of the vote, according to the initial city results. Josh Kraft followed with about 23%. The final two faced off publicly a week before the preliminary on NBC 10's Final Word Forum, where they fielded questions on everything from housing and immigration to city contracts and even rats. Mayor Wu leaned into her record as the incumbent, pointing to policies like the land audit that looked for city-owned sites to develop more housing, easing rules for accessory dwelling units, also known as granny flats, and her administration's Rodent Action Plan, which was launched last summer to tackle the city's rat problem. On economic inclusion, Wu highlighted a record number of city contracts going to minority and women-owned businesses, as well as her city council effort to formalize MWBE contracting rules. Meanwhile, Josh Kraft pitched new ideas areas, like a voluntary rent control plan that would give landlords a 20% tax break if they cap rent increases, scaling back affordable housing mandates that he says are slowing down new developments, and even creating an Office of Rat and Pest Control with on-call rat response vans. Kraft also leaned on personal stories to connect with voters, sharing memories of his immigrant grandparents and how his late mother inspired his support for the arts. Now, with the primary behind them, Boston voters will head back to the polls this November to decide who will lead the city in its next chapter. Next up, there's a troubling trend in our national job numbers, and YW Boston is sounding the alarm. According to the most recent jobs report, black unemployment is up and climbing. The national rate for black workers is 7.5%, nearly double the general unemployment rate of 4.3%. And it gets even worse when you look specifically at black women. YW Boston president and CEO Abba Taylor has been tracking the numbers. She points out that since February, more than 320,000 black women have left the workforce, even as hiring increased for white men and other groups. Why is this happening? Taylor says it's tied to the federal workforce cuts and the backlash we're seeing across the country to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Despite efforts here in Massachusetts to resist those roadblocks and rollbacks, the local data shows that Boston's not immune. So what's being done? YW Boston is stepping up through programming, advocacy, and leadership development. They've launched the Massachusetts Alliance for Equity. They're hosting public forums on black women's mental health and economic challenges, and they're building out a new Women of Color leadership program for 2026, based on their long-running Lead Boston initiative. Taylor's also calling for more data, more transparency, and more support for organizations trying to keep racial and gender equity at the center of the workplace conversation, not on the chopping block. And she's walking the walk. As a daughter of Ghanaian immigrants and a lifelong advocate for social justice, Taylor brings 25 years of experience to this work, from the United Nations to local nonprofits. She's making sure Boston stays a city where black women, especially young black women, are seen, heard, and empowered. In our next story, thousands of Massachusetts residents could soon lose access to both food and health benefits, and it's all because of a newly passed federal law. The so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act may sound poetic, but the reality on the ground is anything but. Two major reports, one from Boston Indicators and the other from the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts Foundation, are sounding the alarm on this. Together, they estimate that more than 40,000 people in Greater Boston could lose SNAP food benefits, and over 200,000 people statewide could lose mass health coverage when this law goes into effect. The biggest changes are work requirements. Under the law, adults over 50 now face expanded work rules for SNAP. Parents of kids over 15 no longer qualify for previous exemptions. And many legally present immigrants, including refugees, asylees, and trafficking survivors, could lose eligibility completely. Gateway cities like Lawrence, Brockton, Lynn, and Lowell are expected to be hit the hardest. And the situation doesn't stop at food stamps. The Urban Institute's analysis projects that between 141,000 and 203,000 people in Massachusetts could also lose mass health, largely due to new work reporting rules and a requirement to recertify eligibility every 6 months. Here's what's really frustrating. Experts say most of these losses won't be because people are ineligible, but because they missed paperwork deadlines or couldn't navigate the complex system that exists. Massachusetts will also be footing a larger share of the bill. Our state's SNAP costs will rise by $58 million next year, and by 2028 we could be paying $260 million more depending on new federal reimbursement formulas. The big picture of all of this, families may be at risk of losing both their groceries and their doctor's visits, and at the same time. And that's no beautiful bill for the working people of Massachusetts.
Greetings, viewers, and welcome to The Intersection, the place where ideas, events, and policy come together to shape the public health, safety, and vibrancy of our shared community. I'm your host, Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins, and together we'll examine a multitude of issues of interest as we travel along the many different avenues that make up The Intersection. It's just breakfast. That's how some might see it. But for a growing circle of men here in Boston, it's becoming something far deeper, a gateway to healing, brotherhood, and generational change. On May 11th, Breakfast for Brothers relaunched at the Reggie Lewis Track and Athletic Center. And while the concept is simple, hot food, round tables, and real conversation, the impact is anything but. Born in 2010, this initiative was created as a space for Black and brown men to connect across generations, to share wisdom, to listen, to be seen, and in doing so to dismantle the old harmful notions of masculinity that have left too many young men without guidance and too many communities without stability. As sheriff, I see firsthand how the absence of mentorship and affirmation can shape a young man's path, especially in our justice system. This isn't charity work. This is public safety work. This is community healing. Each gathering begins with a nourishing meal, followed by a real, raw dialect on wellness, fatherhood, identity, and legacy. It's about showing up and staying present. It's about letting young men know they're not alone, and they never were. There's a deep need for this. Loneliness among men is rising. Emotional isolation, structural inequities, and generational trauma are compounding crises. Breakfast for Brothers meets those head on, not with lectures, but with presence. Not with programs, but with people. This work echoes a timeless truth. Our greatest resource is each other. Mentorship doesn't have to be formal or perfect. Sometimes it's just a voice saying, "You matter," a hand on the shoulder, a shared meal, a birthday song that breaks down walls built over years of silence. With support from our office and community partners like Mamleo and Roxbury Community College, Breakfast for Brothers is building a foundation, a place where young men can find belonging and older brothers can reclaim their role as cultural stewards. By breaking bread together, we can change one room, one table, one life at a time. To hear from the program coordinators of Breakfast for Brothers themselves, read our story in the intersection over in the Bay State banner. Scan the QR code or visit www.baystatebanner.com to read on. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, stay informed, stay involved. We'll see you the next time at the intersection.
Next up, Boston might be the education capital of the country, but there's one thing it's never had, an HBCU. That could soon change. City Councilor Brian Rowell is leading an effort to bring a satellite campus of a historically black college or university to Boston. Last month, the City Council's Education Committee held a public hearing to gather community input. The vision is to create partnerships between an incoming HBCU and local schools like Roxbury Community College, Benjamin Franklin Institute, and Bunker Hill. That kind of collaboration could mean credit transfers, shared campuses, and a new path forward for black students in Boston. And there's already movement. Roxbury Community College just signed a new agreement with Johnson C. Smith University, an HBCU in North Carolina, and is in talks with Delaware State University as well, both aimed at setting up satellite campuses right here in the city. RCC President Jonathan Jefferson supports the effort and says RCC could serve as a launch pad for students looking to complete their HBCU degrees after 2 years of free community college under the Mass Educate program. But building that full HBCU experience with the culture, the bands, the student life, comes with challenges. Worwell says the time is now, especially as attacks on DEI efforts rise nationally. He sees an HBCU in Boston as a real solution to protecting black students' success and building bridges to opportunity. He wouldn't give a timeline, but says the work is happening right now, with next steps possibly including an official city council working group and efforts to model programs like San Francisco's summer residency for HBCU students. Next up, the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, better known as BECMA, is finally getting a permanent home. After years of bouncing between 4 different offices, the organization is settling into a 2-unit building on Roxbury Street, just a few blocks from Nubian Square. The move was made possible through a combination of community support and funding, including $500,000 from the Barr Foundation, which BECMA matched through fundraising. But even then, they had to take out a loan to close the deal. BECMA President and CEO Nicole Obi says the new space checks every box. The new building was scouted by former BECMA board chair Terry Williams, now president of One United Bank. It was purchased last December for around $1.5 million. Last month, the Boston Planning and Development Agency approved a $100,000 grant to support what BECMA is calling their sustainability hub. The hub will focus on organizational growth, community impact, and climate sustainability, helping black entrepreneurs get involved in the clean energy industry. Until renovations are complete, Beckma will continue operating out of Roxbury Community College's Business Innovation Center, where they've partnered with students and RCC staff to support entrepreneurship and civic engagement, a permanent home for one of the Commonwealth's leading advocates for Black economic power. In our next story, Boston's labor movement took to the streets this Labor Day and made a statement that couldn't be missed. Instead of the traditional hotel breakfast, thousands of union members, community organizers, and elected officials gathered in front of the State House, then marched straight through downtown to City Hall Plaza. The message is the working class is the backbone of America, and it's time they were treated like it. AFL-CIO Massachusetts President Lynch called out the imbalance in today's economy. Our laws are rigged to favor the billionaires and corporate executive classes, she said, and it's time to recommit to an economy that actually works for the rest of us. The crowd included members of SEIU, Local 26 hotel workers, teachers unions, and grassroots groups like Lynn United for Change and the Chinese Progressive Association. And marching with them, Senators Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, Representative Ayanna Pressley, and Governor Maura Healey. Congresswoman Pressley said this wasn't a time for ballroom speeches, it was a time for action. The march included stops at historic sites like the first public school in the nation, where teacher unions leaders celebrated wins like smaller class sizes, more nurses and counselors, and that 4% millionaires tax that already raised billions for education and transportation. But the message wasn't just a local thing. Somerville City Councilor Willie Burnley held a sign reading "Labor Against Genocide in Gaza," saying U.S. workers are paying the price while billions go to fund war abroad. Workers' rights here and in Palestine are connected, he said. We need a labor movement that stands up for all people. The event also shed light on current struggles like the Republic Services sanitation workers strike, now stretching into its fourth week. And while the march saw strong support from political leaders, the AFL-CIO's Chrissy Lynch didn't let anyone off the hook. Quote, "We feel shut out by both political parties," she said. "Neither has done enough to secure economic justice for working people. As Representative Sam Montano put it, the energy is rising. People are ready to fight back, and they want fair pay, respect, and dignity at work. That's what this movement is about." Next up, what do you do when your child can't find themselves in the stories that they love? For Crystal Boateng, this answer was very simple. Write your own. When her daughter Whitney couldn't find a single princess book with a Ghanaian or African royalty, Crystal, a Springfield-based mom and attorney, picked up her pen, and then came Afia the Ashanti Princess, a visit to the motherland. Her first self-published children's book, now part of a growing series rooted in Ghanaian culture, pride, and heritage. Crystal found Ashanti Royalty Publishing during the pandemic and has now written several children's books, all inspired by her own trips back to Ghana, and her desire to pass that legacy on, and her storytelling sparked something even bigger. Now she runs, quote, Visit Ghana with Crystal, a travel initiative offering curated tours for families, students, and educators inspired by her books to explore Ghana firsthand. And schools are paying attention. Crystal's been invited to read her books at universities and grade schools around the country, from UNC Chapel Hill to classrooms right here in Boston. She was saying that the city has really embraced her, and she's pointing to the support from Boston Neighborhood Network and Boston University, which has helped her connect with local educators. Her message to other Black entrepreneurs and authors of color are, don't let one rejection derail your dream. If it keeps your passion, keep going. And that's exactly what she's doing, building a bridge between Ghana and the U.S. One book, one trip, one child at a time. With so much going on in all of our worlds right now, what if we just led with some kindness? Even if the world doesn't always give it back. That's the heart of Primary Trust, a Pulitzer Prize-winning play by Ebony Booth, now showing at Speakeasy Stage. The show kicks off the fall season with a warm, offbeat story about hope, change, and human connection. We follow Kenneth, played by Boston native David J. Castillo, a soft-spoken bookstore clerk whose world is turned upside down when his longtime job and safe haven suddenly disappears. With his comfort zone gone, Kenneth is forced to take risks, open up to others, and find purpose in places that he never expected. Director Dawn M. Simmons, now the new artistic director at Speakeasy, says this play is her vision for the theater's future, one where art creates safe space, imagination, and community. The cast is small but mighty, with Arthur Gomez, Janelle Grace, and Louis Negron rounding out the story with heart and humor. Primary Trust runs from September 12th to October 11th at the Boston Center for the Arts and the South End, and the message it leaves behind is clear: that we could all use a little bit more trust, a little bit more grace, a little bit more reaching out, even if it's just helping someone change a tire on the side of the road. Because as Castillo puts it, I truly believe people are here trying to make their best of situations and do their best to make things better for those around them. And sometimes that's all it takes to build a kinder world.
Check 1, 2. In Boston, the show goes on every night. Did you book your trip yet? Boston never gets old.
Next up, St. Cyprian's Episcopal Church is celebrating a milestone: 100 years as a spiritual and cultural anchor in Roxbury, tucked at the corner of Tremont and Walpole. This brick sanctuary was built back in 1924, but the congregation's story begins even earlier, when Black and West Indian residents had nowhere else to worship in the Episcopal tradition. They started in a living room, and then they built a legacy. St. Cyprian's was officially recognized in 1911, becoming Boston's first Black Episcopal parish just 2 years later. By the 1950s, it wasn't just a place of worship. It was a full-blown community hub hosting after-school programs, cultural events, and the legendary Pythagorean Theorem's drum and bugle corps that marched in parades across the city. Longtime member James Dilday says the church played a big role in raising generations of civic leaders. Even Minister Louis Farrakhan grew up here, singing in the choir and playing in the drum corps under his birth name, Eugene Walcott. This week, the church celebrates its centennial with 2 community gatherings: a dinner at Prince Hall in Dorchester on September 13th and a luncheon at Granite Links in Quincy on September 14th. Parish leaders say they're honoring the past, but also building toward the future, welcoming new members, restarting their food pantry, and deepening their work in the greater Boston community. And if you stop by the sanctuary, you'll find something very unique: stained glass windows featuring Martin Luther King Jr. and other Black leaders. It's a reminder that this is a church built by and for the community it serves. After 100 years, St. Cyprian still stands strong, not just as a house of worship, but as a foundation of Black history, resilience, and hope in Boston. Next up, pro athletes know how to master the game on the field, but now a new program is helping them master the game of real estate. It's called Pro Players Property, or 3P, and it's designed to help current and retired NBA, NFL, and WNBA players transition into careers as commercial real estate investors, developers, and decision makers. This program is run by Project REAP, a nonprofit focused on building diverse talent in commercial real estate. With their new 3P model, they're taking the same real estate curriculum from their Legacy Academy and adapting it to fit the unique schedules and career goals of athletes. 3 2-week intensive courses will be held throughout the year, giving players a deep dive into asset classes, development, financing, leasing, and emerging trends like industrial real estate and prop tech. Project REAP Executive Director Tanisha Nash Laird says the program will emphasize real-world case studies and teach players how to build long-term wealth, not just temporary returns. Vice Chair Erica Nicole Harris hopes the athletes walk away with more than just knowledge. She wants them to have the confidence to understand the deals they're offered and even launch collaborative projects with other athletes down the line. One of the first 3P participants is former NFL linebacker Dakota Watson. He says he got into real estate after a successful investment post-retirement and eventually realized he wanted to master the industry, not just dabble in. Programs like this take time studying and commitment, Watson said, but it's worth it if it helps us build a plan for life after football. All right, speaking of football, let's talk a little bit more about it. Week 1 of the season is officially over in the NFL season, and while there were some fireworks across the league, here in New England, the Mike Vrabel era did not start the way Patriots fans were hoping. The Pats fell to the Las Vegas Raiders at home 20-13, and from the first snap, it felt like the tone was already set. The Raiders marched down the field for a touchdown on their opening drive, and things never really swung back in New England's favor. This was supposed to be the fresh start. New coach, new energy, a top rookie QB in Drake May. But mistakes cost the Patriots, including a key interception that helped Las Vegas take full control in the second half. Geno Smith, now under center for the Raiders, played like a man on a mission. 362 yards, completing 70% of his passes and slicing through the Pats defense. And to make things even more painful for us Patriots fans, former Patriot Jacoby Myers was out there doing work, grabbing 8 catches for 97 yards. The Raiders head coach Pete Carroll made NFL history with the win, becoming the first coach ever to win 4 debut games with 4 different teams. That list includes the Jets, Patriots, Seahawks, and now the Raiders. Yes, our former head coach did that in our house. The Patriots now regroup and try to fix things before they face the Ravens, a team coming off one of the wildest losses in NFL history. The Ravens had never lost a game when scoring 40-plus points until now. For New England fans, it's deja vu all over again. A defense that struggles late, a rookie QB under pressure, and a head coach trying to find this rhythm. But remember, this is only week 1, so let's see if the Vrabel era gets back on track, and hopefully fast. Next, in some sports news, what if we trained athletes to care for their minds the way they care for their bodies? That's exactly what NDUR is trying to do. Started in 2022, NDUR for Athletes is a national wellness organization built specifically for high school and college athletes, especially those competing at the NCAA Division I and III levels, who are dealing with mental health stress, injury recovery, and even substance use. At its core, this offers peer-to-peer support and real-time access to professional help. So when an athlete feels isolated, overwhelmed, or like they're falling behind, they're not alone. They can hop on the NDUR platform and talk confidentially with another athlete or counselor who gets it, and in that moment. Kevin McCarthy, their director of mental health, said many injured athletes in the past felt completely cut off with no support and no plan. That isolation, he says, often led to depression or substance use. But this organization takes a proactive approach. Their AI-powered system can actually detect stressors before they escalate, giving athletes the tools they need before it turns into a full-blown crisis. They also work with coaches and athletic trainers, building a safety net that wraps around the whole athletic experience. Not just for performance, but for overall well-being. Naomi Girma, U.S. Women's National Soccer Team star and former Stanford standout, is now an NDUR ambassador. She said she wishes this organization existed when she was in school. NDUR is growing fast, from college campuses to pro locker rooms. And its leadership includes Darren Orr, son of hockey legend Bobby Orr, who says this is his way of giving back to the next generation of athletes. In our next segment, Dreams and Nightmares take center stage at the ICA Boston, where Zimbabwean artist Portia Zvavahera is unveiling her first solo U.S. Museum exhibition. The show, titled Hidden Battles, features 7 large-scale artworks that pull viewers into vivid, surreal dreamscapes. It includes 3 new works that has never been seen before. Animals like bulls, snakes, rats, and owls repeat throughout the work, drawn from Shona and African Pentecostal traditions. Many of these creatures symbolize danger, prophecy, or transformation, especially within dreams. One painting shows a figure laying on a bed of red, grasping at rats, a visual drawn from a recurring nightmare the artist had during pregnancy. Another, translating as "I can see you," features owls with red eyes and sharp claws, omens of death and Shona culture. Zvavahera says her process is spiritual, that transferring her dreams into paintings helps her heal and remove those negative energies. Portia Zvavahera Hidden Battles is now on view at the ICA Boston and Seaport. It runs through January 19th, 2026. General admission is $20, student tickets is $15, and it's free on Thursday nights after 5 p.m., so go check it out. In our last story, if you're hungry for something fresh, local, and delicious, this is for you. The Boston's Local Food Festival is back for its 15th year, and it's serving up more than just good eats. It's celebrating community, culture, and sustainable living right here in the city. Happening Sunday, September 14th, From 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Rose Kennedy Greenway, the festival brings together a vibrant mix of farmers, food vendors, fisheries, and small businesses from across Massachusetts and all of New England. Plus, flavors from nearly every inhabited continent. We're talking raw oyster bars, locally distilled ice creams, yes, with liquor in them for some of you, handmade teas, fresh produce, and a whole lot more. One of the main attractions, 2 live demo kitchens, including a seafood cooking battle where local chefs are given a surprise fish. Last year, it was monkfish, and just a little cash to shop the market and whip up a winning dish on the spot. And for the kids, there's the Family Fun Zone with hands-on food experiences like crab smashing, tastings, and interactive stations hosted by Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. Carrie Kokinogenis from the Sustainable Business Network of Massachusetts, which organizes the festival, says it's more than just a food event. It's a reminder that local food systems are our future. Quote, when federal protections disappear, knowing your local farmer might be what keeps your family safe and well-fed. So whether you're a foodie, a parent looking for a fun outing, or just curious about what's growing and cooking in your neighborhood, this festival is free, welcoming, and packed with flavor. So bring your appetite, bring your curiosity, and maybe skip your breakfast. All right, that's a wrap for this week's Bay State Banner Weekend Review. Thank you so much for tuning in on another exciting week. My name is Bridget Williams, and I will see you all next time.